There comes a moment in every person's life when they look into the mirror and realize that the greatest competition they have ever faced is not standing across the room. It is staring back at them. That realization changes everything. Let me tell you something. Most people spend their entire lives trying to defeat other people. Very few ever learn how to defeat the version of themselves that keeps making excuses. And until you conquer that person, nothing changes. Your income may change. Your address may change. Your friends may change. Your clothes may change. But your life stays exactly where it has always been, because wherever you go, you take yourself with you. Think about this for a moment. What if the greatest opportunity of your life wasn't hidden inside a new job? What if it wasn't waiting for a lucky break? What if it wasn't another motivational video or another book sitting on your shelf? What if your greatest opportunity wakes up every single morning and asks you one simple question? Will you become a little better today than you were yesterday? That question doesn't sound exciting. It doesn't create headlines. Nobody applauds it. Nobody celebrates it. But that single question has separated ordinary lives from extraordinary ones since the beginning of time. Years ago, I met a man who believed he had missed every opportunity life had to offer. He wasn't famous. He wasn't wealthy. He wasn't gifted in ways people admire. He worked long hours. He barely had enough energy when he came home. He believed successful people were simply born different. One evening, he told me something I'll never forget. He said, "Every day feels exactly the same. Listen carefully." That wasn't his schedule talking. That was his identity speaking. Every day felt the same because he had stopped challenging himself. Comfort had quietly become his prison. The strange thing about comfort is that it never feels dangerous. It feels safe. That's why so many people stay there. Comfort doesn't scream. It whispers. It says, "You've worked hard enough. It can wait until tomorrow. One more day won't matter. You deserve a break." And one day becomes a week becomes a month becomes a year. And suddenly you're wondering where your dreams disappeared. Here's what most people don't understand. Dreams rarely disappear overnight. They disappear one comfortable decision at a time. One skipped workout, one unread page, one conversation avoided, one opportunity postponed, one promise broken to yourself, again and again and again. Success isn't stolen from people. It leaks away through tiny cracks that nobody notices until the foundation begins to collapse. Challenge changes everything because challenge forces awareness. When you challenge yourself physically, you discover strength you didn't know existed. When you challenge yourself mentally, you discover thoughts you've never allowed yourself to think. When you challenge yourself emotionally, you discover courage that comfort never required. Every challenge introduces you to another version of yourself. The question is, how many versions of yourself will you die without ever meeting? Imagine carrying incredible potential your entire life, only to leave this world having introduced yourself to only 10% of who you could have become. That thought should shake every one of us, because potential means nothing without pressure. Diamonds are created under pressure. Muscles grow under resistance. Character develops during adversity. Confidence grows after uncertainty. Wisdom often arrives disguised as struggle. We ask life for strength. Life sends resistance. We ask life for courage. Life sends fear. We ask life for growth. Life sends discomfort. Then we complain about receiving exactly what we ask for. I learned something that completely changed the way I viewed difficult days. The difficult day wasn't interrupting my progress. The difficult day was my progress. Write that again in your mind. The difficult day wasn't the obstacle. The difficult day was the training. Think about athletes. Nobody becomes stronger while watching someone else lift weights. Nobody becomes faster by thinking about running. Nobody becomes wiser by collecting inspirational quotes. Transformation demands participation. Life rewards action, not intention, not desire, not talent. Action. The smallest actions repeated consistently become impossible to ignore. That's how mountains move. That's how businesses grow. That's how confidence develops. That's how ordinary people become extraordinary. Not in one giant leap, but through thousands of tiny victories nobody else ever notices. Every morning you wake up with two invisible voices. One says, "Take it easy." The other says, "See what you're capable of." One voice protects your comfort. The other protects your future. Every single day, you decide which voice becomes stronger. Most people think confidence comes first. It doesn't. Action comes first. Confidence follows evidence. You don't become confident before doing difficult things. You become confident because you've survived difficult things. That distinction changes everything. A young woman once shared her story with me. She wanted to change her life. She didn't know where to begin. She believed successful people possessed incredible discipline. She believed they woke up inspired every morning. She believed motivation never left them. Then one mentor asked her a question. "What challenge have you completed today that yesterday's version of you couldn't?" Silence. She had no answer. So she started small, one extra page every morning, one uncomfortable conversation every week, 1 hour learning a new skill every evening, one promise she refused to break. Nothing dramatic happened after one day. Nothing dramatic happened after 1 week. Even after 1 month, she wondered whether any of it mattered. Then something invisible began happening. She trusted herself more. She walked differently. She spoke differently. She stopped apologizing for taking up space. She volunteered for opportunities she'd once avoided. Not because the world changed, because she changed. That's what daily challenges really build, not achievements, identity. And identity is the engine behind every lasting transformation. People chase motivation, but identity quietly determines behavior. If you see yourself as someone who quits, you'll eventually quit. If you see yourself as someone who finishes, you'll find a way. The challenge isn't just changing your habits. The challenge is changing the story you tell yourself about who you are. Here's what most people don't understand. The story inside your head eventually becomes the reality outside your window. If every morning you remind yourself that life is difficult, you'll notice difficulty everywhere. If every morning you remind yourself that growth lives inside discomfort, you'll begin searching for opportunities hidden inside challenges. Perspective changes performance. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you intentionally chose something difficult, simply because you knew it would make you stronger? Not because someone forced you. Not because circumstances demanded it. Because you demanded it from yourself. That question reveals more about your future than almost anything else. Because life eventually forces everyone to face difficult moments. The people who voluntarily practice difficulty are prepared. The people who avoid difficulty are overwhelmed. Every challenge you willingly accept today becomes protection for tomorrow. Imagine 2 trees. One grows inside a greenhouse, perfect temperature, no wind, no storms. The other grows outside, rain, heat, cold, powerful winds. At first glance, the greenhouse tree appears healthier. But the first real storm reveals the truth. The sheltered tree snaps. The tested tree bends. Why? Because resistance built roots. Your roots grow every time you refuse to surrender to comfort. Every difficult conversation, every disciplined morning, every completed promise, every lonely hour spent improving instead of complaining, those become roots. And roots determine survival. People often ask why some individuals remain calm during chaos. It isn't because they were born fearless. It's because they trained themselves in smaller storms long before the larger ones arrived. Challenge yourself today. Not because today demands it, because tomorrow might. There is another truth we rarely discuss. Regret grows quietly. Pain is loud. Regret whispers. You don't hear regret while you're scrolling. You don't hear regret while you're procrastinating. You don't hear regret while you're making another excuse. Regret waits passively. Years later, it asks, what if? What if you had started? What if you had continued? What if you had believed in yourself one more day? Those questions become heavier with time. The pain of discipline usually lasts minutes. The pain of regret can last decades, and every person listening has a choice to make long before regret ever arrives. And the remarkable thing is that regret doesn't arrive looking like a monster. It arrives looking like an ordinary day, a day when you tell yourself, you'll begin tomorrow, a day when you decide one more excuse is harmless, a day when you trade a meaningful step forward for a moment of comfort. Those days seem insignificant while you're living them. But when you stack hundreds of them together, they become the story of a life that never quite reached its possibilities. Let me tell you something. Every day presents you with an invitation. Not an invitation to impress the world. An invitation to surprise yourself. The world doesn't need another person trying to look successful. The world needs more people quietly becoming stronger than they were yesterday. Strength is often invisible before it becomes undeniable. Think about this for a moment. Imagine someone carrying 2 buckets of water up the same hill every morning. The first morning, the buckets feel impossibly heavy. Their shoulders ache. Their hands tremble. They question whether they'll ever become strong enough, but they return the next morning. And the next, weeks pass. Months pass. The hill hasn't become smaller. The buckets haven't become lighter. The person has become stronger. That's how life works. The challenge rarely changes first. You do. And because you do, the very thing that once intimidated you becomes part of your normal life. That's why you should never measure your growth only by what you've accomplished. Measure it by what no longer scares you. Measure it by conversations you once avoided, but now welcome. Measure it by responsibilities that once felt overwhelming, but now feel manageable. Measure it by how quickly you recover from disappointment. Growth isn't just about climbing higher. It's about carrying more without breaking. Here's what most people don't understand. The purpose of a challenge isn't to prove your worth. It's to reveal your capacity. Those are 2 completely different things. You don't have to earn the right to grow. You already have that right. Your responsibility is simply to answer the invitation. I remember speaking with a young entrepreneur who had failed more than once. Every setback convinced him he simply wasn't cut out for building something meaningful. He kept comparing himself to people whose success looked effortless from the outside. I asked him a simple question. What are you practicing every day? He looked confused. He started talking about the market, about competition, about timing. I stopped him. No, I said. What are you practicing? Because whether you realize it or not, every day you're practicing something. Some people practice courage. Some practice discipline. Some practice gratitude. Others practice hesitation. Others practice blaming. Others become experts at doubting themselves. Whatever you repeat becomes familiar. Whatever becomes familiar begins to feel unnatural. That's why some people seem incredibly resilient. They've practiced getting back up. Not once, thousands of times. Resilience isn't a personality trait. It's a habit. It's built in moments nobody applauds. It's built when nobody is watching. It's built when quitting would be easy and continuing would be uncomfortable. Think about a blacksmith shaping a piece of steel. The steel isn't strengthened by avoiding the fire. It is strengthened because it enters the fire again and again, each time emerging a little more refined. Our lives aren't so different. Challenges heat us. Disappointments strike us. Unexpected changes reshape us. If we remain willing to learn instead of becoming bitter, Those experiences forge something inside us that comfort never could. One of the greatest misconceptions is that successful people somehow avoid hard days. They don't. They simply stop negotiating with every uncomfortable feeling. They understand that feelings are real, but they are not always reliable guides for meaningful action. There will be mornings when you don't feel disciplined. There will be evenings when you don't feel hopeful. There will be seasons when progress seems invisible. Those moments don't define your future. Your response to those moments does. I learned something years ago that has stayed with me ever since. The easiest promises to make are the ones we make to other people. I'll be there. I'll finish it. You can count on me. But the hardest promises to keep are often the ones we make to ourselves. I'll wake up earlier. I'll stop making excuses. I'll learn that new skill. I'll take care of my health. Every time you keep one of those promises, something extraordinary happens that no mirror can immediately reflect. Your self-respect grows. And self-respect is one of the most valuable forms of wealth you'll ever possess, because once you trust yourself, your decisions become firmer, your posture changes, your words carry more conviction. You stop asking permission to pursue the life you know you're capable of building. You begin acting from belief rather than hope alone. Consider the person who decides to read 10 pages every day. 10 pages don't seem life-changing. Neither does one workout. Neither does saving a small amount of money. Neither does spending 20 minutes learning instead of scrolling. Yet the future is quietly shaped by ordinary actions repeated long enough. The compound effect isn't dramatic in the beginning. That's why so many people abandon it. They mistake invisible progress for no progress. A seed planted beneath the soil appears unchanged for days. No applause, no visible movement. Yet beneath the surface, roots are spreading in directions the eye cannot see. Imagine digging up that seed every morning. Because you don't think it's growing, you would destroy the very process you were hoping to accelerate. Sometimes we do the same thing with our own lives. We become impatient with progress that is still developing beneath the surface. We question ourselves just because the results haven't appeared on our preferred timeline. Growth has its own rhythm. Character has its own pace. Wisdom cannot be rushed. There is a quiet confidence that comes from honoring the process instead of constantly chasing immediate proof. And that confidence becomes visible long before the results do. People start noticing something different about you, not because you've announced a transformation, because your consistency begins speaking louder than your intentions. Let me ask you another question. Who would you become if you spent the next year challenging yourself in one meaningful way every single day? Not one extraordinary day, 365 ordinary days. Imagine learning one new lesson every day, making one courageous decision every day, keeping one difficult promise every day, refusing one excuse every day, choosing one act of discipline every day. At the end of that year, you wouldn't simply have a collection of better habits. You would have become someone who no longer waits for ideal circumstances before taking meaningful action. That is one of the greatest transformations a human being can experience. Because once you stop waiting for perfect conditions, you discover something that has always been true. The conditions were never the deciding factor. The decision was. And once that realization settles into your heart, you begin approaching every challenge differently. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You begin asking, what is this asking me to become? That single shift changes the emotional weight of every obstacle. Suddenly, setbacks become classrooms. Delays become opportunities to strengthen patience. Criticism becomes a chance to sharpen discernment. Failure becomes information rather than identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone being pushed around by circumstances. You begin seeing yourself as someone being shaped by them. And that perspective creates a kind of freedom that cannot be purchased, borrowed, or handed to you by anyone else, because the person who embraces challenge no longer fears growth. They begin to seek it, even when it arrives wearing the disguise of uncertainty, because somewhere deep inside they have learned that every meaningful transformation in their life has always begun just beyond the edge of what felt comfortable. And once you truly understand that, you start looking at each new day with a different question entirely. Not, how can I make today easier? But how can I make today count a little more than yesterday? And the answer to that question is rarely found in extraordinary moments. It's found in the quiet decisions that nobody else will ever notice, decisions that slowly reshape the person you become from the inside out, until one day someone looks at your life and says, "You were lucky," never realizing that what they are really looking at is years of invisible challenges accepted willingly, one ordinary day at a time, long before anyone else could see where those choices were leading. And that's why I want you to guard yourself against one of the most dangerous lies you'll ever hear, the lie that says, "This isn't enough." Because when people say that, they're usually talking about small daily efforts. This workout isn't enough. These few pages aren't enough. This one conversation won't matter. This small improvement won't change anything. But think about nature for a moment. A river doesn't carve through stone because it is powerful for one afternoon. It carves through stone because it refuses to stop flowing. Consistency accomplishes what intensity alone never can. Let me tell you something. Your future isn't watching for one spectacular day. Your future is watching what you repeat. If someone followed you for the next 30 days, without listening to your dreams, without reading your journal, without hearing your goals, could they predict where your life is headed? Probably, because direction is revealed through routine. You don't accidentally become disciplined. You rehearse discipline. You don't accidentally become patient. You practice patience. You don't accidentally become confident. You collect evidence that you can keep your word to yourself. Every challenge you complete becomes another piece of evidence. Evidence says, "I've done difficult things before." Evidence says, "I don't quit just because it's uncomfortable." Evidence says, "I'm becoming the kind of person who finishes." That evidence becomes louder than fear. Fear doesn't disappear. It simply loses its authority. Here's what most people don't understand. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is choosing a direction that matters more than the fear standing in front of it. Years ago, I heard about an older gentleman who decided to learn to read fluently. After retiring, people laughed. Some said he was too old. Others asked, "What's the point now?" He smiled and answered with words that stayed with everyone who heard them. "If I don't challenge myself, I'll spend the rest of my life becoming smaller." Think about that. Not poorer, not weaker, smaller. Because every time we stop growing, we begin shrinking on the inside. The world may not notice it immediately, but we do. Our curiosity fades, our confidence weakens, our conversations become repetitive. We start living from memory instead of possibility. Challenge keeps possibility alive. Challenge reminds you that there is still another mountain to climb, another lesson to learn, another fear to face, another chapter waiting to be written. One of the greatest tragedies isn't that people fail. It's that they stop discovering who they could have become. Imagine reading only the first 3 chapters of an incredible book and deciding you've already seen enough. How many twists would you miss? How many beautiful moments? How many life-changing pages? Now imagine doing that with your own life. Every challenge is another page. Every lesson is another chapter. Every difficult season is another opportunity to discover strengths that comfort kept hidden. I learned something from watching craftsmen, whether it was a carpenter, a musician, or someone shaping clay with their hands. They all shared something in common. They respected repetition. Not glamorous repetition, not exciting repetition. Ordinary repetition. The musician plays scales that audiences never hear. The carpenter measures twice before making one careful cut. The athlete repeats movements thousands of times before the championship ever arrives. Mastery isn't built on extraordinary moments. It's built on ordinary moments treated with extraordinary care. Now ask yourself something. How are you treating your ordinary moments? Because that's where your future is quietly being constructed. Not during vacations, not during celebrations, not during the occasional burst of motivation. It's being built on Tuesday mornings, Wednesday evenings, rainy afternoons, the moments when no one is applauding, the moments when your choices seem invisible. Those invisible choices become visible lives. There was a young father who worked long shifts every day. He wanted to provide a better future for his children. By the time he got home, he was exhausted. He could have easily convinced himself that learning something new could wait. Instead, every night after dinner, he spent 30 minutes studying. 30 minutes. Some nights he understood very little. Some nights he nearly fell asleep over his notes. His progress felt painfully slow. Months passed, then years. Eventually, he qualified for a position he once believed was completely beyond his reach. Someone congratulated him and said, "Everything happened so fast." He laughed. Fast? They were looking at the harvest. They hadn't seen the seasons of planting. Most people admire outcomes because they never witness the process. Don't be discouraged if your process is invisible. Invisible roots produce visible forests. And the deeper your roots become, the less you'll need constant praise to keep growing. You'll develop something much more valuable than external motivation. You'll develop internal conviction. That quiet voice that says, keep going, even when nobody notices. Especially when nobody notices. Because the greatest transformations often occur before anyone else believes they're possible. Think about a butterfly. For a long time, all anyone sees is stillness. From the outside, it appears that nothing extraordinary is happening. But inside, an astonishing transformation is taking place. What if some of your greatest seasons are like that? What if the silence isn't emptiness? What if it's preparation? What if the challenges you're facing right now are shaping a version of you that your current perspective simply cannot yet recognize? That's why patience is such a powerful companion to discipline. Discipline keeps moving, patience keeps believing. Together they create momentum that outlasts temporary emotion. Let me tell you something else. Never confuse being busy with being challenged. Those are not the same thing. Many people fill every hour of their day. Very few intentionally stretch themselves. You can stay busy for years and never truly grow. Growth requires intention. It asks uncomfortable questions. What belief do I need to let go of? What habit is quietly stealing my future? Where have I become too comfortable? Which excuse have I repeated so often that it now sounds like truth? Those questions are not pleasant, but they are liberating. Because the moment you become honest with yourself, you regain the power to change. Personal responsibility isn't about blaming yourself. It's about recognizing that your response is always your greatest source of influence. You may not control yesterday. You may not control the economy. You may not control other people's opinions. You may not control unexpected hardships, but you can choose whether today becomes another brick in the foundation of your future or another excuse stored away for later. Every sunrise hands you fresh building material. The question is whether you'll build with it. Here's something I wish more people understood. Your identity is always under construction. Whether you're aware of it or not, you're becoming someone. Every conversation shapes you. Every decision shapes you. Every challenge accepted shapes you. Every challenge avoided shapes you. Nothing is neutral. Even standing still changes you. because while you're standing still, time keeps moving. That's why delaying growth carries a hidden cost. Not only do you postpone becoming stronger, you postpone all the lives you might have influenced because you chose to become stronger. Think about that. The discipline you develop today may one day become the encouragement your child needs. The courage you build today may become the example a friend desperately needs to witness. The wisdom you earn through today's struggle may someday prevent someone else from giving up. Growth is rarely just about you. Its impact travels farther than you can imagine. A single person who decides to challenge themselves consistently can quietly change the atmosphere of an entire family, an entire workplace, an entire community. Not because they became perfect, but because they became intentional. And intentional people carry a different kind of energy. They don't wait for life to become meaningful. They bring meaning into the way they live, into the way they work, into the way they listen, into the way they respond when life refuses to go according to plan. And somewhere along that journey, they stop measuring success only by what they achieve and begin measuring it by who they are becoming each time they willingly step into another challenge that asks just a little more of them than yesterday did, because they understand that every worthwhile life is built one courageous decision at a time, and every courageous decision begins long before anyone else can see its reward. In that quiet moment when a person looks honestly at themselves and chooses once again not to settle for the person they were yesterday, but to keep reaching toward the person they know they are capable of becoming. Because every meaningful breakthrough begins long before anyone else recognizes that a breakthrough is taking place. Most transformations are invisible at first. That is why so many people abandon them. They expect progress to announce itself. Instead, progress whispers. It whispers in the form of better decisions. It whispers in the form of greater patience. It whispers in the form of saying no to what once controlled you. Those whispers eventually become a voice so strong that your entire life begins to echo with them. Let me ask you something. Have you ever looked at someone and thought, I wish I had their confidence? What you may not have seen were the hundreds of moments when they chose courage before they ever felt confident. Confidence is not a gift. It's a receipt. It is the receipt you earn after paying the price of consistent action. Every difficult conversation, every early morning, every promise kept, every temptation resisted, every fear confronted. Those are the payments. Confidence is simply the evidence that you've made them. Here's what most people don't understand. Life rarely rewards what you intend. Life rewards what you repeatedly do. Entertainments make us feel good. Habits make us different. There is a tremendous difference. Many people intend to become healthier. Few consistently make healthier choices. Many intend to become financially secure. Few consistently develop the habits that create financial wisdom. Many intend to become emotionally stronger. Few consistently place themselves in situations that require emotional maturity. Your intentions introduce you to possibility. Your habits escort you there. Think about an architect standing before an empty piece of land. Before the building appears, there is a blueprint. Before the blueprint becomes reality, there is imagination. But imagination alone never builds a home. Someone has to lay the first brick, then another, then another. No single brick seems impressive, yet remove enough of them and the structure never stands. Your daily disciplines are those bricks. Protect them. Respect them. Don't underestimate them simply because they look ordinary. Ordinary actions performed with extraordinary consistency become extraordinary lives. I once met a teacher who spent years encouraging children who struggled in school. She didn't have expensive resources. She didn't have perfect classrooms. She simply refused to stop believing in the potential of the young people sitting in front of her. One student, who had almost convinced himself he would never amount to anything, came back years later. He had built a successful career. He hugged his old teacher and said something unforgettable. "You believed in me before I knew how to believe in myself." Think about the power of that. Sometimes the greatest challenge isn't climbing another mountain. Sometimes it's refusing to give up on yourself before the results arrive. There will be days when your belief feels small. Protect it anyway. There will be mornings when discipline feels heavy. Carry it anyway. There will be seasons when progress feels painfully slow. Continue anyway. Because perseverance has a remarkable quality. It quietly outlasts excuses. Excuses demand immediate comfort. Perseverance invests in future freedom. One costs very little today and everything tomorrow. The other costs something today and gives you everything later. That is one of life's greatest exchanges. Temporary comfort often creates permanent limitations. Temporary discomfort often creates lasting opportunity. Which investment are you making? Think about this for a moment. Imagine two clocks. One measures hours. The other measures growth. Most people watch the first one. Very few pay attention to the second. You can spend an entire day moving from task to task without becoming a stronger human being. Growth requires reflection. Growth asks questions. What challenged me today? Where did I choose courage instead of convenience? Where did I allow fear to make my decisions? What lesson almost passed me by because I was too distracted to notice it? Those questions transform ordinary days into meaningful education. Life becomes a classroom for those willing to learn. For everyone else, it simply becomes repetition. One mentor I deeply admired used to say that every person is carrying an invisible backpack. Inside that backpack are beliefs collected over many years. Some were given to us by encouraging voices. Others were placed there by criticism. Some were earned through experience. Others were accepted without examination. The challenge is that many people spend their lives carrying beliefs that no longer belong to them. I'm not capable. I'm too late. I'm not smart enough. I've always been this way. Those beliefs become unnecessary weight. The remarkable thing is that no one else can remove them for you. Someone can encourage you. Someone can inspire you. Someone can guide you. But eventually, you must decide which beliefs deserve to continue traveling with you. That decision changes the direction of an entire life, because every meaningful action begins with a belief. If you believe growth is possible, you'll search for opportunities. If you believe failure defines you, you'll avoid risks. If you believe challenges are teachers, you'll approach them with curiosity instead of resentment. Perspective becomes the doorway through which every experience enters your life. Let me tell you another story. There was a man who wanted to climb a mountain that overlooked his hometown. Every morning he looked at that mountain from his window. Every morning he said, "One day." Years passed. The mountain never moved. Finally, one morning, he stopped saying, "One day." He put on his shoes and began walking. The climb was harder than he expected. There were moments when he questioned himself. There were paths that seemed endless. There were places where he wanted to turn around. When he finally reached the top, something surprised him. The greatest reward wasn't the view. The greatest reward was realizing he had become someone who no longer postponed difficult things. The mountain changed his identity far more than it changed his scenery. Never underestimate what a challenge is doing inside you while you're focused on what's happening around you. The external achievement may be temporary. The internal transformation can last a lifetime. That is why every challenge carries two rewards. One visible, one invisible. The visible reward may be a promotion, a healthier body, a completed project, a new opportunity. The invisible reward is almost always greater. Greater patience, greater resilience, greater wisdom, greater self-respect, greater trust in your own ability to endure. Those qualities cannot be taken away by changing circumstances. They travel with you into every future opportunity. Think about how many people spend years searching for the perfect opportunity while ignoring the opportunity that arrives every sunrise. The opportunity to become a little more disciplined, a little more generous, a little more courageous, a little more focused. Those improvements seem almost too small to celebrate, yet they quietly reshape every area of life. Relationships improve because patience improves. Careers improve because responsibility improves. Health improves because consistency improves. Leadership improves because character improves. Everything grows from the inside outward. That is why chasing appearances without developing character is like painting the leaves of a dying tree. For a little while, it may look impressive, but eventually, the roots reveal the truth. Strengthen the roots. Strengthen your thinking. Strengthen your discipline. Strengthen your integrity. Strengthen your willingness to do what is right, even when it would be easier not to. Those are the foundations that support extraordinary lives. And here's something I've noticed over the years. The people who keep challenging themselves don't become fearless. They become familiar with fear. They stop treating fear as a stop sign. Instead, they begin seeing it as a signal that they are approaching something meaningful. If a conversation scares them, they prepare and have it. If a new opportunity intimidates them, they learn what they need to learn and take the first step. If a dream feels impossibly large, they stop measuring it by today's ability and start measuring it by tomorrow's growth. That simple shift changes everything because they no longer ask, "Can I do this today?" They ask, "Who must I become to do this well?" And that question has the power to transform not just your goals, but your entire way of living, because once your attention moves away from proving yourself and toward improving yourself, every challenge becomes less about protecting your image and more about expanding your capacity. And when your capacity expands, opportunities that once seemed impossible begin to look different. Not because the world suddenly became easier, but because the person standing in front of those opportunities is no longer the same person who once walked away from them. And before you leave here today, I want you to carry one thought with you. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when life becomes easier. Today, because life has a way of asking questions without using words. 5 years from now, it will ask you, "What did you do with the mornings I gave you?" 10 years from now, it will ask, "What did you do with the talents you kept hidden?" One day, it will ask the only question that truly matters. Did you become the person you were capable of becoming? No one else can answer that question for you. Not your family, not your friends, not your critics, not your circumstances. Only you. Let me tell you something. The future is not built in giant moments of inspiration. It is built in the quiet decisions nobody celebrates. It is built when you choose discipline over delay, growth over comfort, responsibility over excuses, faith over fear, action over intention. Every sunrise places a blank page in your hands. Most people let the world write on it. You don't have to. Pick up the pen. Write with your choices. Brought with your courage. Brought with your discipline. Brought with your consistency. Because one decision repeated long enough becomes a new identity. And a new identity creates a new future. Think about the person you could become if you simply refuse to quit. Think about the family you could inspire, the lives you could touch, the dreams you could build, the example you could leave behind. You are far more powerful than your doubts have ever allowed you to believe. There is more strength inside you than comfort has ever demanded. There is more courage inside you than fear has ever revealed. There is more purpose inside you than failure has ever been able to erase. Your past may explain where you've been. It does not decide where you're going. Your mistakes are chapters. They are not the title of your life. Your failures are lessons. They are not your identity. And your greatest days are not behind you unless you decide they are. So make a promise to yourself right now. Not a promise built on emotion, a promise built on commitment. Promise yourself that when tomorrow morning arrives, you will no longer wait for motivation to knock on your door. You will become the person who gets us up anyway, who learns anyway, who works anyway, who believes anyway, who keeps walking anyway. Because every single day you challenge yourself, you send a message to your future, I'm coming. Every disciplined choice is another step toward the life you've imagined. Every act of courage is another vote for the person you're becoming. Every time you refuse to surrender to comfort, you move one step farther away from regret. Years from now, when you look back on this season of your life, don't let your story be, I almost started. Don't let it be, I waited. Don't let it be, I wish I had believed in myself. Let your story be this. I decided, I committed, I endured, I kept going, I became. Because destiny is rarely found, it is built. Built through ordinary days, filled with extraordinary decisions. Built through discipline when no one is watching. Built through consistency when no one is applauding. Built through faith when the results are still invisible. And one day, when the world looks at your life and wonders how everything changed, you'll know the truth. It wasn't one lucky break. It wasn't one perfect opportunity. It was the day you stopped waiting for a different life and started becoming a different person. So when you leave this moment, don't just feel inspired. Me. Take the first step. Make the first call. Ride the first page. Wake up with purpose. Keep the promise. Accept the challenge. And then accept it again tomorrow. Because the life you've been hoping for is waiting on the other side of the decision you make today. The future is watching. Your purpose is calling. Your potential is waiting.